Our first trip to the UK was an amazing adventure. We spent an incredible 4 weeks traveling throughout England and Scotland.
As big fans of music and pop culture, London has always been on our bucket list. But when we started planning our trip, we quickly realized that there was so much more to the UK. The more we researched, the longer our list of places we wanted to visit grew.
We decided to go all in and see as much as possible. We booked our flights and committed to spending a full month exploring the UK. Our plan? 1 week in London, followed by 3 weeks adventuring through other parts of England and Scotland. Little did we know, this trip would change our lives and lead us to taking 2 more trips and spending over 7 months exploring the UK.
Our journey began on what has become one of our favorite airlines, Virgin Atlantic. We touched down at Heathrow Airport and made our way to Shoreditch, where we booked our Airbnb. As soon as we arrived, we were struck by the city's energy and history. The architecture, the double-decker buses, the iconic black cabs, it was all so quintessentially British.
Our first stop on the list? Trying authentic British fish and chips. We went to a highly rated chip shop in our neighborhood, and the excitement was unbearable. The fish was huge, much bigger than we had expected. We knew that we had to try fish and chips in the UK, but we had no idea how different they were from the US version. The giant fillet in a crispy batter with those perfectly cooked chunky chips. We'd previously thought that fries and chips were the same, and we just had different names for them, but we do not have chips like that in the US. The mushy peas were a new experience for us, definitely not something that you see very often in the States. We thought the whole experience was pretty darn good, but we've since learned from our amazing viewers that if you can, get a side of curry sauce and grab your fish and chips by the seaside.
We checked into our Airbnb and got up early the next morning to explore the city. Being the tourists that we are, we hopped on one of those iconic double-decker buses for a hop-on, hop-off tour. It was a great way to see the city if you're short on time. We got to see so many of the famous landmarks, Big Ben, Westminster Abbey, and all those very legitimate American candy shops that are not laundering money. We also walked across the Tower Bridge. The views of the Thames and the city from the bridge were just spectacular.
One of our top recommendations for London, Sky Garden. We got there early in the morning and it was such a peaceful way to start the day. The views are absolutely breathtaking. You can see St. Paul's Cathedral, the Shard, so many iconic landmarks from up there. And the best part is that it's absolutely free. Just make sure you book in advance. We also explored Leadenhall Market. It's a beautiful covered market with stunning Victorian architecture. And fun fact, it was used as the entrance to Diagon Alley in the Harry Potter films. If you like this video, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We have so much more to share with you.
One of the highlights of our London stay was an incredible music tour with rock cab tours. We got to see the iconic phone box from David Bowie's Ziggy Stardust album, Abbey Road, Freddie Mercury's house, and so many other important musical landmarks. We even saw the rooftop where the Beatles had their last live performance. If you love music and music history, this tour is a must-do. Next up, we hit the markets, Borough Market and Camden Market. If you're in London, you absolutely have to check out at least one market. We've been to a few now, and while Borough is the most popular, it's popular for a reason. The food at Borough Market was incredible. We tried these amazing sausage rolls from the Ginger Pig. They were delicious.
I would also highly recommend the booth selling raclette. That was a highlight for me.
At Camden Market, we had fantastic Indian street food. The variety and quality of the food at these markets was just unbeatable. If you can only visit one, make it Borough Market. The food, the atmosphere, and the close proximity to other attractions, it's all worth it.
While in London, we met up with our friends from Kent, Jason and Josh. They took us to a few off-the-beaten-path, lesser-known spots that turned out to be true hidden gems. One of them was Highgate Cemetery, a beautiful Victorian-era graveyard that's the final resting place of many notable figures. We wandered through the ivy-covered tombstones, marveling at the ornate architecture and soaking in the eerily peaceful atmosphere. We've since seen a lot of movies and TV shows that feature the cemetery and get excited how instantly recognizable it now is to us. Our friends also took us to Primrose Hill. It was a complete change of scenery. This picturesque park offers one of the best panoramic views of London's skyline. It's the perfect spot to relax and really appreciate the beauty of London from a different perspective.
After London, we hired a car, which routed us through a very congested London. We stopped in Richmond, a picturesque town on the outskirts of the city. Richmond is known for its beautiful riverside location and expansive park, but we had a very specific reason for visiting there. It's where the hit TV show Ted Lasso was filmed. The Crown and Anchor pub, which in real life is called the Prince's Head, was right there in the town square. We couldn't help but pop in for a pint, and it was a highlight for our nerdy selves.
Then we headed to Windsor, and the reason we went wasn't to see Windsor Castle, but to see Oakley Court. I'm a huge Rocky Horror Picture Show fan, and Oakley Court was used as Frankenfurter's castle in the movie. It's now a very fancy hotel, and while we didn't stay there, it's pretty pricey. It was amazing to see this location in person.
Next, we made a stop at the iconic Stonehenge. This prehistoric monument has always been on our bucket list, so we were excited to see it in person. Learning about how some of the stones traveled hundreds of miles from Wales made it even more impressive. However, we have to admit the experience was a bit underwhelming. You are no longer allowed to walk up to the stones and instead view them from a distance, which somewhat diminishes the sense of awe and the connection to history. Still, there's something magical about standing in the presence of such an ancient and mysterious structure, even if it's from afar.
From Stonehenge, we journeyed down to Devon and Cornwall, and on the way down, made our first ever stop at a Tesco supermarket. It was fascinating to explore the aisles and discover British staples we'd never seen before. We couldn't resist trying high-quality foods like Frey bento pies and pot noodle. While these might not be considered gourmet cuisine by UK standards, we were surprised by their quality compared to similar convenience foods back home in the States.
From there, we ventured into Dartmoor National Park. We found the ancient Post Bridge Clapper Bridge, a stunning example of medieval engineering that has spanned the East Dart River for nearly 700 years.
It was here that I first realized how truly special the UK is. There is just so much incredible history to behold throughout the country. I also fell in love with the Dartmoor ponies. I'm a sucker for horses and all horse-related animals, and I loved how we could just pull over and marvel at them. This was also our first time experiencing an abundance of sheep. We don't have sheep like this in the US, and the sheep in the countryside is one of the best bits that always reminds me of the UK. We intended to visit a tiny village in Dartmoor that I had traced my ancestry back to, but the narrow, winding roads and the high walls were a bit overwhelming and intimidating, so we gave up on that drive. I hope we can make it back. Not only to walk in the footsteps of my ancestors, but to take in more of the stunning, incredible scenery in Dartmoor. We also had our first cream tea in Devon, a quintessential British experience, and in my opinion, the best British food. In Devon, they put the cream on first, then the jam. In Cornwall, they do it the other way around, so when we went to Cornwall, we made sure to do it the Cornish way there.
And can we just take a minute to appreciate how unexpectedly beautiful Cornwall is? Those bright blue waters are not what we pictured when we thought of England. It completely blew us away. We visited St. Michael's Mount, which is an incredible castle on a tidal island. We also tried our first Cornish pasty, a traditional savory pastry filled with meat and vegetables. It's the perfect handheld meal, and I can see why it was popular with the miners back in the day. We watched a beautiful sunset in St. Ives.
I especially loved the gorgeous views from the flat we stayed in Falmouth.
From Cornwall, we headed north, making a special trip to Wells, the hometown of director Edgar Wright. As huge fans of Hot Fuzz, visiting Wells was like walking into a movie set. We saw the beautiful cathedral, one of the most stunning that we've seen in all of our travels. We found some of the spots where some of the movie's funniest scenes were filmed, and it feels very appropriate that we ate our first cornetto ice creams that we picked up from the shop in the movie. It's such a charming city. We'd love to go back and explore more, especially because we've been told that we have to go see other places in the area, like Cheddar Gorge and Glastonbury.
While in Wells, we went to the beloved bakery chain, Greg's. Their sausage rolls are famous, and now we know why. They're pretty delicious, especially considering how inexpensive they are. We also tried a few other items like their steak bake. It's a cultural experience that you have to try in the UK, and it's not quite like anything else we've had in the US.
Our next stop was Bath, and wow, what a gorgeous city. The Roman baths are incredibly well preserved and so interesting to explore. We tried the famous Sally Lunn buns, which lived up to their hype. They're these huge, slightly sweet buns that you can get with sweet or savory toppings. We also just loved walking around the city. The Georgian architecture is so beautiful and uniform.
Throughout our journey, we were constantly amazed by how much history is everywhere. Coming from the US, where our oldest buildings are only a couple of 100 years old at most, it was mind-blowing to see structures that have been standing for 1,000 years or more.
After Bath, we did a 24-hour British fast food challenge, trying places like KFC, McDonald's, and Burger King to see how they differ from their American counterparts. The menu items were so different. We tried things like the Halloumi King at Burger King, which we don't have in the States. The KFC gravy in the UK is on another level. It's so much better than we're used to back home. We were especially impressed with how many more vegetarian and vegan options that there are in the UK fast food restaurants.
We headed north to Liverpool, a city with an incredible musical legacy. As longtime Beatles fans, Liverpool was a place that we'd both been looking forward to visiting for years. We met up with our friends Sean and Caroline and kicked off our visit with a trip to the Beatles Story Museum, which takes you through the band's history from their early days in Liverpool to the global sensation they became. It's an immersive experience that really brings their story to life. We also couldn't miss the world-famous Cavern Club, even if it is not the original location. Walking down those steps into that brick-vaulted cellar, you can just hear the echoes of rock and roll history. Plus, there was a show going on. It was just an incredible experience to behold. We took a Beatles bus tour that took us to iconic spots like Penny Lane and Strawberry Fields, and we also explored the revitalized Albert Dock area, which is now home to museums, restaurants, and shops. Liverpool Cathedral is the largest in Britain and the 5th largest in the world. It's an awe-inspiring sight, and one of the highlights was the unique whispering arch, where you can hear whispers from a different part of the cathedral. Spooky. This video is sponsored by ExpressVPN. We love traveling and sharing our adventures with you, but traveling often means facing online challenges, which is why we use ExpressVPN. When you're using Wi-Fi in cafes, hotels, or airports, you're an easy target for hackers. ExpressVPN wraps your online traffic in an encrypted tunnel, keeping your sensitive data safe. Without a VPN, Wi-Fi owners can see every site you visit. ExpressVPN ensures your online activity stays private, even on holiday-let networks. When we're not in the UK, we sure miss our British TV shows, but ExpressVPN lets you change your online location to any of 105 countries, so you can stream content from home, wherever you are. In countries with internet censorship blocking sites like Google and Instagram, ExpressVPN helps you bypass restrictions. You can also use it for remote work, accessing your banking and email apps securely. We use ExpressVPN whether we're accessing British content at home or managing our US accounts while we're in the UK. Want to try ExpressVPN for yourself? Find out how you can get 3 months free by scanning the QR code on the screen, clicking the link in the description box, or going to expressvpn.com/Magic Geekdom.
Then it was on to York, a city that completely captured our hearts. As soon as we walked through the city walls, it felt like we'd stepped back in time. The Shambles, with its overhanging timber-framed houses, is one of the most iconic sights in all of England. It's easy to see why walking down that narrow winding street is magical. York Minster, the city's stunning cathedral, dominates the skyline. We climbed to the top of the central tower, all 275 steps, for panoramic views of the city. The views from the top were absolutely worth it.
While in York, we had our first afternoon tea at the famous Betty's Tea Room. The elegant 1930s-inspired decor, the delicate china, the tiered stand filled with finger sandwiches, scones, cakes. It was everything we'd imagined and hoped a British afternoon tea would be. While in York, we also sampled traditional pub fare at one of York's oldest pubs. I have to admit, the pork crackling was the one thing I tried on our entire trip that I did not enjoy. But hey, you can't win them all, and Jeremy, on the other hand, seemed to like it.
Our next stop was the seaside town of Whitby. Famous for its connection to Bram Stoker's Dracula, Whitby has a gorgeous Gothic atmosphere. The ruins of Whitby Abbey are hauntingly beautiful, and we enjoyed wandering the streets and taking in the seaside town. We went to Quayside, where we got to try our first fish and chips in a seaside town. A lovely experience. This is where I first fell in love with curry sauce.
Although we took a break from filming, we spent a few days in Newcastle where our friends lived, and they showed us a lot of neat things in the area, like Alnwick Castle. Throughout our time in northern England, we were struck by how different it felt from the south. The accents changed, the landscapes shifted, and there was a distinct character to each city we visited. It really drove home how diverse and varied England really is, despite being a relatively small country.
Little did we know Scotland was about to blow us away in a whole new way. We crossed the border into Scotland, making our first stop in the coastal town of Eyemouth, before spending our first night in Scotland in true fairy tale fashion, staying in a castle. Melville Castle, to be exact. And it might be more of a stately home than a castle, but we're American, and it's a castle to us. It was a fun experience to sleep in a place with so much history, and the grounds were beautiful.
In Edinburgh, we were immediately struck by the city's beauty and unique charm. The Royal Mile, a popular tourist spot, was a highlight for us. We explored the iconic Edinburgh Castle perched atop an extinct volcano. The views over the city are absolutely breathtaking. Even if you don't make your way inside the castle, you have to at least come to the entrance and look at the views. One of our most unique experiences was the Mary King's Close tour. Although filming wasn't allowed, the underground tour takes you through the preserved 17th century streets beneath the Royal Mile. It's fascinating to learn about how people lived in these underground spaces. We of course had to try the famous haggis, neeps, and tatties for the first time, and to our surprise, it was pretty tasty. We loved exploring Edinburgh's Grassmarket area, a vibrant hub with great views of the castle. We even caught the market while we were there one day. Nearby, we visited Greyfriars Kirkyard, known as the Harry Potter Cemetery. We geeked out just a little, finding graves inspired by character names like Thomas Riddle. The kirkyard's eerie beauty and historical significance made it a highlight. We've just never seen any kind of headstones or any cemetery look quite like this before.
Mary's Milk Bar is a must-try in Edinburgh. It's an amazing gelato shop, and it usually has a line, but it's worth the wait. Kara tried the olive oil and peach flavor, while I stuck with the delicious fried banana and butter.
I'm salivating just thinking about it. It was so good.
The Cocktail Geeks was a really fun bar, because it has rotating themes, and when we visited, it was superhero themed.
My Powerpuff Girl drink was a 10 out of 10.
We also spent time in Glasgow, which had a completely different vibe from Edinburgh. We explored the city centre and tried things like a deep-fried Mars bar and deep-fried pizza, known as Pizza Crunch. Our time was limited as we were flying out early the next morning, but it's a city we've been back to twice now, and hopefully we'll be back again soon.
As we boarded our plane, we were immediately reminiscing about how much this trip meant to us. It was our first time in the UK, and it completely exceeded our expectations. The people we met were so friendly and welcoming. All of the food we tried, minus the pork crackling, was delicious, and the places we visited were just incredible. This trip sparked a real love affair with the UK for us, which is why last year we decided to spend 6 months there. If you like this video and would like to see a recap of our other trips, let us know in the comments.
Thank you for watching, and thank you to our patrons for supporting our channel. And make sure you check out our 10 must-visit places in the UK video.
We've now spent a total of over 7 months exploring this incredible country, and we think we have a few great recommendations for you. We'll see you over there.